I'm Emma, and my 16th birthday live stream started out like a dream, before turning into a nightmare. You ready, Grandpa? I whispered into the camera, the phone trembling slightly in my hand. I'm about to show you the biggest surprise ever. My grandfather, Walter replied through my earbuds. Been ready for a minute, sweetheart. Today's your day. I pushed open my bedroom door, hands slightly shaking with excitement. Ever since he promised me a set of professional brushes, I'd been planning to rearrange my art corner. I'd even dreamed about it a few times. A brand new oak easel, imported watercolors, and the golden light of the afternoon streaming through the window, where I'd paint my first real portrait. But when the door opened, my breath caught in my throat. The easel was gone. So were all the paintings on the wall. In their place stood a pristine white crib, sitting right in the center of the room under the fading sunlight. The old beige walls had been painted over, soft pink now, and goofy cartoon giraffes danced across every corner. The room wasn't mine anymore. No way. I took a step back. My arm trembled and I nearly dropped my phone. Grandpa, are you seeing this? Emma, what's going on, honey? I didn't answer, just stood there, swallowing the burn rising behind my eyes. Downstairs, I could hear my parents' voices coming from Dad's office, the scent of stale coffee and the faint whirring of the printer echoing like a familiar chorus in my head. I walked down the stairs, every step as heavy as stone. The live stream was still running, but I didn't care. I needed answers. Dad's office door was cracked open. I paused as I heard my mom, Harper, speaking in that cold, matter-of-fact tone she always used. She'll understand, Scott. Sooner or later she needs to grow up. Chloe needs the room. It's almost time. At the very least, we could have waited until after her birthday. My dad, Scott replied weakly, not today. I pushed the door open. Mom stood by the window, arms crossed, looking calm as if I weren't even there. Dad sat behind the desk, avoiding my gaze like always. What happened to my room? I asked. My voice came out hoarse. Mom turned, expressionless. It's your sister's room now. Chloe needs space for the baby. You understand that, don't you? I stood frozen. Chloe, my 19-year-old sister, was pregnant. She still lived at home, didn't work, didn't go to school. And yet, I was the one being pushed out? You'll stay with Aunt Karen for a while, Dad chimed in, just until things settle. Settle? I laughed, voice cracking. It's my birthday, and this is your gift to me? Don't be dramatic, Emma. Mom cut in sharply. You're 16, old enough to understand that the world doesn't revolve around your feelings. I looked at her. So what am I, in the way? Just something to move aside so Chloe and her baby get the spotlight? Aunt Karen's expecting you. I've packed your essentials, she added, turning away like her part was done. I turned my back, hot tears blurring my vision. Thanks for the birthday wishes, I said flatly. Really unforgettable. As I climbed the stairs, I whispered into the phone. Grandpa, you still there? His voice came instantly. I saw everything, Emma. Every word. I'm here with you. I didn't say anything else. I just stood in the room that no longer belonged to me, running my fingers along the smooth edge of the new crib. So white, so hollow. The grinning giraffes seemed to mock me. In that moment, I made myself a promise. This won't be the ending, not a chance. I left the house on a Sunday afternoon, 2 days after my birthday. Aunt Karen's old SUV had been parked out front since noon, but I'd kept stalling. Mom didn't see me off. She just muttered, "Don't bother Chloe, she needs rest." Chloe didn't say anything. She stood by the stairs, hand on her belly, eyes avoiding mine like I was the one who did something wrong. You doing okay? Aunt Karen asked as I climbed into the car. Her soft brown hair fell over her shoulders, streaked with silver. She glanced at me in the rearview mirror but didn't say another word during the 40-minute drive to her place outside Franklin, Tennessee. I didn't answer. What was there to say? She lived alone in a cozy two-story house lined with red maple trees that had already started turning for fall. The room she gave me was upstairs, empty, but clean. She strung soft LED lights across the window and laid out a fresh comforter on the bed. Just temporary, she said gently, until they figure things out. I nodded, set down my suitcase, and quietly closed the door. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, unfamiliar ceiling above me, wind brushing the roof, chest hollow. I couldn't remember the last time my dad hugged me. And Mom? She always treated emotions like something that had to be managed. I picked up my phone. A message from Chloe. Chloe, Mom says you're still mad about the room. Don't be childish, Emma. You're fine with Aunt Karen. I gripped the screen, hands shaking. No apology, no hint of regret. Just another command, like always. I powered off the phone and threw it onto the bed. That was the moment I finally understood. They didn't push me out because there was no space. They pushed me out because I didn't fit their story anymore. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table with Aunt Karen. She poured milk into a glass and carefully peeled an apple, as if steadying herself. Emma, she said slowly, I don't know what's going on back there, but this isn't normal. Your dad called me Friday night. Didn't ask if I could take you, just said, Emma's staying with you a few weeks, like I'm a hotel. I looked at her. You could have said no. She put the knife down. And leave you there with them? She shook her head. No, Emma. I've stayed silent long enough. For the first time in years, I felt someone was really standing with me, no conditions attached. I was about to thank her when the phone on the table buzzed. It was Mom. I didn't want to answer, but Aunt Karen's concerned glance made me put it on speaker. Her voice came through, calm as ever. Emma, family dinner tonight at Vander's. Chloe's making the official pregnancy announcement. You're expected. Don't cause a scene. Aunt Karen frowned and opened her mouth to speak, but I stopped her with a slight shake of my head. I brought the phone closer. This isn't an invitation, is it? My mother paused for a moment. No. This is a requirement. You're still part of this family, if you still want to be considered as such. She hung up. I sat in silence for a while, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. They're not calling because they care. They just need me to play a background role in their performance. Emma, Aunt Karen said gently, if you don't want to go, I can. I'm going tonight, I cut in, and this time I won't stay silent. That evening, I wore a burgundy dress Aunt Karen had carefully ironed that afternoon. Not to impress, but to remind myself that I was still me, whether or not they wanted to erase me from the family picture. Aunt Karen drove me to Vander's, the restaurant my family had picked for their big night. The parking lot was packed with luxury cars, and the outside lights reflected off the glass like some kind of staged production. You sure you don't want me to come in with you? Aunt Karen asked, eyes still on the wheel. I shook my head. I need to walk in on my own this time. She didn't say anything else, just squeezed my hand before I opened the door. Don't forget. You're not alone. Inside, my whole family was seated at a long table under a crystal chandelier. My mother sat at the head, as always, and her eyes skimmed past me so quickly I wondered if she even registered my presence. Emma, sit here, Chloe said, waving me over. She was wearing a simple white dress, her belly slightly showing, her smile as stiff as glue. I sat down, feeling the heaviness settle around the table. My father looked at me, lips parting as if to say something, but then he dropped his gaze, as if courage had escaped him again. My mother gently tapped her wineglass. Everyone, thank you for being here. Today's a special occasion. Chloe has some exciting news. Chloe placed a hand on her stomach, giving a strained smile. The baby is 3 months along, and today, I want to officially share that with all of you. Applause broke out. I didn't clap. Mom glanced at me, then nodded toward a man nearby, the restaurant owner, an old friend of Dad's. Right then, a server walked over and placed an ivory envelope in front of me. I opened it. It was a ticket to a winter art camp in Colorado, the one I'd dreamed of for 3 years, the one Mom had always dismissed. I went numb. A makeup birthday gift, my mom said breezily. We all know you love art, so go. Get away from whatever makes you feel overlooked. I understood instantly. They didn't buy the ticket because they cared. They wanted me gone, just in time to preserve their perfect family image. A rebellious daughter going silent for a few weeks was ideal for their PR rebuild. I folded the envelope and placed it back on the table. Thank you. But I think I'll choose where to chase my dreams, not where you find it convenient. Mom frowned. Emma, don't start this again. No, I said, standing up and pulling my phone from my pocket. I'm ending it. I need some air. I walked out of the restaurant, the late autumn chill slapping my face like a wake-up call. I was shaking, not from the cold, but from the storm inside my chest. Back at Aunt Karen's, I didn't go upstairs. I headed for the kitchen instead. She was sitting in her armchair near the stove, knitting, bathed in the soft yellow light. Thought you'd stay out late. I pulled out a chair and sat beside her. Do you remember my 11th birthday? She looked up. The year you painted your first watercolor? I nodded. I spent 3 weeks working on it, hung it right in the living room, waiting for Mom to come home and see it. But she canceled the party for a last-minute meeting. She didn't say anything, just reached out and gently squeezed my hand. You were the only one who came. You brought brownies and a handwritten card. You were the only one who asked, "How are you feeling?" She smiled softly. I always believed you'd be the first in the family to choose your own path. I swallowed back the tears. Do you think I really can? Emma, she said, her voice warm like a winter fire. You don't have to be like anyone else in that family. You just have to be yourself. The girl brave enough to stand up when others wanted her to disappear. My phone buzzed. A message from Chloe. You were right. There's a lot I haven't told you. But I'm not sure I'm as brave as you are. I read the message again and again, then shut off the screen. A strange, familiar feeling stirred in my chest. Not anger, but hope. Faint, but real enough to remind me that my story wasn't finished yet. 3 days after the dinner at Vander's, I went back to my old house. Not because I missed it, but because I needed answers. I used the excuse of retrieving an acrylic paint box Mom had thrown in the basement, the only thing left from my room. She agreed quickly, saying, "Just remember to knock. Chloe needs rest." But I didn't use the front door. I had a spare key one Mom thought I'd lost back in 8th grade. I slipped in through the back, walked quietly through the dim hallway leading to the family library. The smell of old wood and her perfume still lingered in the air. I paused, listening. My mother's voice came through clearly from the office next door. She'd lowered it, but every word slipped through the cracked door. Yes, Mason, the deal still stands. Once Richard agrees to the merger, we'll control 51% of the joint shares. I froze. Richard, Chloe's husband, CEO of Reynolds Pharmaceuticals, the longtime rival of our family company, Whitmore Corp. I leaned closer. Chloe's baby is the only bargaining chip softening the Reynolds family, Mom continued, her voice colder than steel. We have to make everything look like a perfect alliance between the two families. And Emma? She ruins the image. Mason, his voice gravelly, sounded unsure. But Chloe's starting to suspect. She says you're using the baby. She has no choice, Mom snapped. She depends on Richard's money. And Richard depends on us, at least until the merger is finalized. I clearly heard her sip something, probably wine. What about Emma? Mason asked. Send her away, as far as possible. The art camp is just the beginning. If needed, I'll place her in a behavioral therapy program. As long as she disappears long enough, we'll avoid any media risk before the next shareholder meeting. I almost dropped my phone. My heart pounded so violently I could barely breathe. I understood. It was all just a game of chess. Chloe's pregnancy, the so-called unity between the two families. And me? I was just an expendable pawn. I quietly backed out, leaving that house like a ghost. That night, I told Aunt Karen everything. We sat in the kitchen, the soft yellow light casting a glow over the old wooden table. "You heard it all?" she asked, her voice lower than usual. I nodded. "Mom is gambling with her reputation. And the company. And she's using Chloe's baby as leverage." Aunt Karen gripped her hands together. "She's never known where the line is." "I don't know what to do," I sighed. "If I tell Chloe, will she even believe me? Or will Mom twist the whole thing again like she always does?" Karen stayed quiet for a long moment. Then she stood up, opened a cabinet, and pulled out a small wooden box with a lock. "Since you were 12, she said, "I've been keeping a record." I stared at her, stunned. "Every time your mother called to pressure you into dropping an art class, every time she canceled a competition you entered, every time you were pushed aside because Chloe needed priority, I saved it all." I opened the box. Inside were dozens of printed emails, audio recordings, screenshots, even a copy of a rescinded scholarship application your mother had withdrawn under false pretenses. "You don't have to fight this alone," Aunt Karen said, locking eyes with me. "If you want to bring the truth to light, we have everything we need to make them face it." I nodded. "But I'll need one more person." "Chloe." Karen sighed. "Chloe's trapped in a gilded cage. The question is, do you think she wants to get out?" I wasn't sure, but I knew I had to try. I picked up my phone and reopened Chloe's last message. "You were right. There's a lot I haven't told you." I replied. "Meet me. Just us. I have something you need to know. This isn't about Mom, it's about you and the baby." I hit send, and for the first time, instead of fear, I felt quiet but certain. A new chapter was about to begin. That Saturday morning, I was woken up by a firm knock on the door. Aunt Karen, who was baking cookies in the kitchen, froze when she saw who was standing outside. "Walter?" she said, stunned. My grandfather, Walter, was wearing a gray sweater under a thick navy wool coat. In his hand was an old leather briefcase, and his usual warm expression was gone, replaced by an icy look, like early winter frost. "Emma," he said, "we need to talk, right now." I sat at the kitchen table, clutching a warm mug of cocoa Aunt Karen had made. Grandpa set the briefcase on the table and opened it. Inside were stacks of documents bearing the Whitmore Industries logo, the company he founded in his youth. "I heard everything," he said slowly, "the entire conversation between Marcia and Mason." I froze. How did you hear that? Did you forget I'm still on the remote access system for the office surveillance devices? Marcia hasn't changed the password since 2019. I almost laughed, if the situation weren't so heavy. "I wasn't going to get involved," he continued. "But this has gone too far." He pulled out a thicker file and slid it toward me. "This is the draft for a proposed change in ownership structure. This company cannot be in the hands of someone who puts personal ambition above family honor." I carefully opened the file. The header made my heart race. "Proposed interim transfer of executive authority to Karen Whitmore and Emma Whitmore." I stared in disbelief. "You're giving the company to me?" "Not full control," he clarified quickly. "You're 16, still a student, but you'll co-sign decisions with your aunt during this transitional period. And when you're of age, if you want it, the position will be yours." I looked at him, hands still trembling. "Marcia forgot one thing," he added, "that you, Emma, are not the invisible shadow in this family. You're the light they've been trying to cover up." Aunt Karen teared up. "Walter, are you sure? This decision will drive Marcia mad." "Let her be mad," he said firmly. "It's time someone stood up." He turned to me, placing a hand on the table. "But I won't force this on you. You can walk away and live a normal life. The choice is yours." I looked at the documents, messy clauses, stamps, signatures in draft form, and suddenly remembered the unfinished painting in my sketchbook. An open door, light spilling through the crack. I nodded. I'll do it. That afternoon, the three of us walked into Whitmore's corporate headquarters. We hadn't made an appointment. The receptionist looked so shocked she dropped her pen. I gave a polite smile. I'm here to see my mother, I said, and Mason, if he's available. We entered the main conference room, where my mother was seated with Chloe and a few senior board members. She sprang to her feet. Dad? Why are you here, and why is Emma with you? Grandpa Walter said nothing. He laid the files on the table, opening each one, spreading them out like he was exposing every piece in a rigged chess match. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, this is my final decision as founder and honorary chairman of Whitmore Industries. My mother's face drained of color. You can't do this. I can, he replied calmly, and I will. Chloe looked around, confused. Mom, what's going on? I stepped forward, facing my mother head-on. The truth is, you used Chloe's pregnancy to secure a merger deal with her husband's family. And when I found out, you planned to get rid of me, label me as unstable, just to silence me. The room fell completely silent. You have no evidence for these accusations, my mother said, her voice trembling. It's all fabricated. Is that so? Walter pulled out his phone and played the recorded call between her and Mason. Everything fell apart after that. My mother stepped back, her face pale. Chloe clutched her belly, collapsing into a chair, tears spilling from her eyes. Why would you do this to me? She whispered. My mother said nothing. As we left the conference room, I turned back to look at the nameplate on the wall. Whitmore Industries. For the first time, it didn't symbolize a place I'd been excluded from. It was a chance to begin again. With truth. And with myself. That evening, the family held a reconciliation dinner at our lakeside estate. Mom sent the invite as a short text. No pleasantries, no explanations. Just, be there by 6 p.m., we need to talk, privately. Grandpa told me I didn't have to go. Aunt Karen kept warning, if you sense anything off, leave. You don't owe them proof of anything. But I knew I had to go. Not to be accepted again, but to end this game, on my terms. The estate looked the same as always. Pristine, cold, artificial. Soft golden lights spilled across the polished wood floors, each chair placed perfectly, like the house existed only for a photo shoot. I stepped into the dining room. Everyone was already seated. Mom at the head, with Mason and my father beside her. Chloe sat across from them, pale, arms wrapped around her belly like a reflex. One look into her eyes told me. She had heard me, but she wasn't ready to act. Emma, my mother smiled faintly, her voice sweet enough to chill my spine. Come sit down. We need to talk like a family. I sat without removing my coat. I didn't take my eyes off her. She nodded and placed a folder on the table. These are documents from a well-respected treatment center in Vermont. They offer specialized therapy for teens experiencing emotional distress. You can start next week. I froze. My father stayed silent, as usual. Mason stared down at the table. Chloe looked up, lips trembling. Mom, what are you doing? My mother didn't answer right away. She tapped on her tablet a few times, then held it up. She needs help, and this is why. She played a video. It showed me at the dinner at Vander's, my face angry, my voice sharp. But the words had been edited. Sentences like, I'm nothing to you people, and I'll destroy everything, were spliced together out of context, jarring and disconnected. I looked around. No one spoke. Did you edit this? I clenched my fists. You did this to your own daughter? No one wanted it to come to this, my mom sighed, voice thick with false concern. But you're unstable, Emma. You need help. I need the truth, I said, and you need a pawn out of the way. I pulled a small USB drive from my pocket and placed it on the table. This has the unedited footage from that night, and the audio of you instructing the editor to cut it, your voice, no one else's. Her face drained of color. Chloe broke down crying, hiding her face in her hands. My father still said nothing. Mason looked like he was about to get up, until Grandpa appeared behind him. "I figured this dinner needed a real witness," he said, his voice deep and firm. I had never seen my mother look so shaken. "You have no right," she gasped. "I do," Grandpa replied curtly. "And this time, I'm using it." He took out another set of documents, a newly signed and sealed version of the family trust. "Marcia, as of tonight, you are officially removed from your roles as company executive, financial signatory, and brand representative of Whitmore Industries. All assets will now fall under the trust, controlled by Emma and Karen." The room went silent. My mother stood, her voice cracking. "You can't do this to me, Emma. I gave everything for this family." I stared into her eyes. "No. You gave everything for power. You were willing to sacrifice your own daughters to get it." Chloe looked up, her eyes still wet but sharper than I'd ever seen. "I won't let you use me or my child as tools anymore. This ends now." My mother looked around, finding no one on her side. She trembled, then turned to me one last time. "You'll regret this." I stood, stepping away from the table. "No, Mom. The only thing I regret is staying silent for so long." That night, I left the estate with Grandpa and Chloe. Beneath the dark sky, the wind rushed through my hair, carrying with it something unfamiliar. Freedom. We didn't say much, but I knew, starting that night, the chessboard had turned. And I, Emma Whitmore, would never be someone's pawn again. I thought that reconciliation dinner was the end. But it turned out to be just the beginning of a storm my mother never saw coming. And the one who shook the ground wasn't me. It was Chloe. 2 days later, when things seemed to be calming down, I was at the city library reading documents about the trust Grandpa had transferred, when my phone buzzed. A message from Chloe. "Tonight, 7 p.m. Bishop's Restaurant. Bring Grandpa. Don't tell Mom." I read the message over and over. Not because I doubted it, but because I couldn't believe that Chloe, the one who always stayed quiet, always followed, always avoided conflict, had finally chosen to stand with the truth. Bishop's was housed in a brick building with vintage charm, warm golden light cascading from low crystal chandeliers. When Grandpa and I arrived, Chloe was already there. She sat in the corner, wearing a long cream coat, one hand resting gently on her belly like muscle memory. She looked exhausted, but her eyes were clear. I hadn't even asked a question when she handed me a small USB. "This has everything." I frowned. "Everything what?" Chloe looked at Grandpa. "I started recording the calls after I found out Mom was messaging Richard behind my back, trying to arrange a merger without telling me." My eyes widened. "You recorded, Mom?" Chloe nodded. "You were right. Mom never loved anyone more than she loved herself. This baby is just another pawn to her. But not this time." She pulled out her phone, plugged in earbuds, then selected a recording and switched it to speaker. "You have to get Emma out of the picture, Chloe. Her eyes are too bright. You don't understand, but this company needs a new image. A successful mother, a grown daughter, and an adorable grandchild. Everything else? Clean it out." The sentence echoed through the room as if my mother were standing right in front of us. Grandpa clenched his fist. "That's enough. Walter Whitmore won't let anyone manipulate his own blood for even one more second." Chloe trembled slightly. "I'm sorry for waiting this long, but I won't stay silent anymore." I reached for her hand. For the first time in years, there wasn't a wall of silence between us, but a raw connection between two daughters, abandoned in very different ways. The next evening, my mother called for an urgent family meeting at our home. I, Grandpa, Chloe, and Aunt Karen all showed up. Not to hear her explain, but to end it, once and for all. My mother stood in the middle of the living room, her hair perfectly styled, a black velvet dress flawlessly pressed, like she was prepping for a Power Woman magazine shoot. "Dad," she said when Grandpa walked in, "you've been misled. Emma is unstable. Chloe is impressionable. Karen is—" "Stop, Marcia." Grandpa cut her off. "We're going to listen to something first." He looked at Chloe. She pressed play on her phone, putting it on speaker. No one in the room moved. As my mother's cold, calculated voice filled the space again, I saw Mason step back. My father stared at her in stunned silence, maybe for the first time in his life. Aunt Karen stood still, her eyes locked on my mother's pale face. This isn't legal. You forged evidence," my mother yelled, but her voice was starting to unravel. "Enough," Chloe said, surprisingly calm. "You can manipulate the media. You can cut video, twist words, but you can't change the truth." Stepped forward. "And the truth is, we've seen who you are. And this time, no one's looking away." My mother glanced around. No allies, no defenders, no fear left in anyone. Finally, she collapsed into the armchair, staring blankly, as if for the first time in her life, she realized she was truly alone. As Chloe and I left that house that night, a soft rain began to fall. The autumn rain was cold, but cleansing. It felt like everything was being washed away to make room for something new. "Do you think she'll ever change?" Chloe asked softly. I looked ahead, where Grandpa's car waited. "Maybe," I replied. "But this time, change starts with us." 3 days after that final confrontation, I walked into the main conference room at Whitmore Industries with Grandpa, Chloe, and Aunt Karen. It was the fourth quarter shareholder meeting, and this time no one was hiding in the wings. Before me was a long table of executives and stakeholders, many of whom had dismissed me as the invisible child for years. Now, they were waiting to be convinced they'd backed the wrong person all along. My mother, Marcia, sat at the center in a sharp black blazer, her face unreadable, but I could see she was struggling to stay composed with every breath. Grandpa Walter stood first, his voice low but resonant in the cold room. "Ladies and gentlemen, I've called this meeting not just to review the last quarter's financials, but to announce a transfer of power that should have happened years ago." All eyes turned to him. After careful consideration, he continued, "I'm officially removing Mrs. Marcia Whitmore from the board of directors and permanently suspending her executive authority, financial sign-off, and brand representation." A wave of murmurs rippled through the room. My mother gripped the arm of her chair but said nothing. He turned to look at me and Chloe. "Executive authority will now be held temporarily by 3 individuals. Karen Whitmore, Senior Advisor, Chloe Matthews, Director of External Relations, and Emma Whitmore, Chair of the Development and Innovation Fund." I could barely breathe hearing my name. My mother shot up. "You can't! She's only 16. She's not qualified. She's not even legally of age." Grandpa raised his head. "Emma won't sign anything alone. All decisions will be made through the oversight group, which includes myself, Karen, and Chloe." My mother turned to the shareholders. "You all know I kept this company afloat through 2 financial crises. You're seriously replacing me with a teenager?" Chloe stood, quiet but firm. "What you call keeping it afloat was really dragging it down through manipulation and underhanded mergers. That era is over." My mother looked at me. For the first time, her gaze held something different. Maybe fear. I rose, opening the folder in my hand. "This is our new strategic report. Our first project under the Development Fund. We're investing in art therapy programs for at-risk teens, the kind of initiative Mom once called a waste of resources." I looked up, but it was art that saved me when my family turned its back, and I believe it can save others too. The room fell silent. Then one of the oldest shareholders began to clap. Then another, and another. until the room filled with the sound of unanimous applause. Grandpa smiled softly, then pulled out another stack of documents. And this is the official revocation of all documents submitted to the Vermont treatment facility. I tore them, one by one, letting the pieces fall into the wastebasket beside the podium. I let Marcia control too much, for too long, but I won't let her institutionalize my granddaughter just to shut her up. After the meeting, as everyone filed out, I stayed behind in the empty boardroom. Under the overhead lights, the new layout for our creative workspace sat on the table, where I'd begin redrawing the canvas of my life, this time on my own terms. Chloe walked in, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "You okay?" I nodded. "Better than ever." She sat beside me, glancing around the room. "Mom won't give up easily." I gripped my cup. "That's fine. I'm not alone this time." Chloe smiled, not forced. "And I'm not running anymore." I didn't say a word. I just quietly opened my sketchbook and drew the first line. Not a scar, but a beginning. 6 months later, I stood in the middle of a small exhibition room on the Berkeley campus, where I was now part of a special pre-college art program for exceptional young artists. The largest painting of the night was covered by a thin white cloth. No one had seen it, not yet. Beside me stood Chloe, holding baby Ava, sleeping peacefully in her mother's arms. A little further away, Grandpa Walter chatted with 2 members of the scholarship committee, and Aunt Karen stood near the refreshment table, subtly adjusting the frames. I took a deep breath, not to calm myself, but to remember just how far I had come. From a girl forced out of her home on her 16th birthday, to a young student invited to debut her first exhibition at the art department of one of the most prestigious universities in the country. Not because of status, but because of talent and truth. The lights in the room dimmed as the chimes signaled the start of the formal presentation. I stepped into the glow, facing the waiting faces. "My name is Emma Whitmore," I began, voice steady, "and the painting I'm about to reveal is not perfect. Just like my family. Not perfect. Full of pain. Full of silence. But still capable of healing." I gently pulled down the cover. Family portrait unfinished. The room fell still. On the canvas was an intentionally asymmetrical composition. I didn't paint us posed for a photo. Instead, each person was captured in a personal moment. Chloe reading to Ava under soft yellow light. Aunt Karen sitting in her armchair by the window, journal in hand. Grandpa tending to his bonsai tree in the garden corner. And me, a girl painting in a sunlit room, surrounded by scrap paper, brushes, and unfinished streaks of color. Just behind me stood a shadowy figure, blurred, undefined. No name, no face. Full present, as if never fully gone. Chloe stepped closer and whispered, "Is that Mom?" I nodded slightly. I haven't fully forgiven. But I didn't erase her, either. She was quiet for a moment, then squeezed my hand. "Thank you for being brave enough to tell it." I smiled. "I'm not rewriting the past anymore. I'm painting the future." After the exhibition, a member of a private scholarship committee approached me with a full-ride offer to Berkeley's 4-year program. I tried to stay calm as I signed the paperwork, but inside it felt like fireworks silently bursting. That night, when the gallery had emptied, I returned alone. The lights were dim, the wooden floor echoing softly under each step. I stood before a family portrait unfinished one last time, before it would be stored away. My phone buzzed. A message from Mom. "The painting is beautiful. I don't deserve to be in it. But thank you for leaving a space. Maybe I'll learn how to step into it, the right way." I didn't reply. I didn't delete it either. I just looked at the painting for a long while, then took one step back. Some things will never be perfect. Some people never return the way they were. But one thing I've learned: we have the right to choose how we tell our story. And I, Emma Whitmore, chose to tell mine in color, instead of anger. With truth instead of silence. With brushstrokes instead of bruises. I stepped out of the gallery and closed the door behind me. Outside, the spring breeze had begun to rise. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the extra in someone else's story anymore. I was the author. One June morning, I sat by the window of my small apartment near Berkeley's campus. Sunlight streamed through the sheer white curtain, warming the unfinished sketches spread across my desk. Then the phone rang. Not a message from Chloe. Not a scholarship email, but a number unfamiliar, yet familiar. Mom! I didn't pick up right away. My hand hovered, pencil trembling lightly on my finger. Finally, I tapped accept. Emma, she said. No longer cold, but tentative. I'm not calling to apologize, because I know some things an apology won't fix. I didn't say anything. I'm in a support group now, she continued. They say the first step is admitting you've hurt people. I could hear the scratch of her pen. Maybe she was taking notes? I read the article about your exhibition, about the painting family portrait. I didn't know what to feel. Pride felt arrogant. Pain didn't seem enough. But I stood in front of it, while the gallery was still open. Alone, I gripped my phone. Not out of anger, but because my heart was beating in a strange rhythm. I saw the empty space behind the girl painting, she whispered, and I knew that space was meant for me. I nodded slightly, even though I knew she couldn't see me. You don't have to forgive me, she said. But if you'll allow it, I'd like to learn how to try again, even if it's slow. I let the silence linger for a few seconds, then quietly replied, just don't pretend anymore. A week later, I received a letter from the scholarship board, an official confirmation of a full 4-year program, along with a nomination for an international art exchange in Florence during my second year. I sat still with the letter in my hands, not because I didn't believe I could do it, but because for the first time, I believed things were finally heading in the right direction, without needing to be perfect. That evening, I visited Chloe and baby Ava. She was reading on the sofa, Ava peacefully asleep in her crib nearby. When she saw me, she smiled. Mom sent you something. I frowned. A gift? Chloe handed me a small envelope. Inside was an old photo. Me at 4 years old, holding a box of crayons, scribbling on the living room wall. My face was beaming, and Mom was sitting behind me, looking down with a rare smile, one that didn't exist in the memories I carried. On the back of the photo was a handwritten note. I used to see the light in you, but I forgot how to believe in it. Now I'm learning again, one step at a time. I held the photo for a long time, then tucked it into my sketchbook between 2 blank pages. Not to forget, but to keep as a reminder that healing begins when we stop looking away. That summer, I started teaching art to underprivileged children at a community center near Berkeley. Chloe continued managing external affairs at Whitmore Industries, but this time she made the calls herself. Aunt Karen launched a small grant fund for young independent artists, and Grandpa spent every weekend morning planting lavender around the nursing home where he had just signed up as a volunteer. My family never returned to what it used to be, but I stopped wishing for that. We weren't perfect. We weren't ideal, but we were trying. And this time, we meant it. I ended the summer with a small exhibition at the local library. No press, no cameras. Just real people, with real stories. The final piece in the exhibit was called Still Writing. An unfinished painting. A pale background. Lines not fully formed. But in the center, a young girl holding a brush. And looking forward. I had learned something from this journey. Family isn't always about being right. It's about having the courage to begin again. I used to think I was just a shadow in someone else's story. But then I realized I have the right to rewrite it. Not perfectly. Not for approval. Just truthfully, without turning away from who I am. We may not get to choose our family, but we do get to choose how we respond. We get to choose to stand up. To love, even from a safe distance. If you've ever felt pushed to the sidelines, remember this. You are not invisible. You are not worthless. You're just beginning your own chapter. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is keep painting, even if the canvas is still unfinished. Emma's story is a powerful reminder that no one deserves to be written out of their own life, whether by family expectations or past pain. In real life, there are young people who have been silenced, dismissed, or undervalued, but they chose to rise, refusing to let the past define their future. Healing doesn't begin with perfection. It begins with the courage to face the truth and the determination to keep writing the story on their own terms. What do you think about Emma's journey and the choices she made? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more real, heartfelt stories about family, resilience, and the quiet power of healing.